You state that when agencies become aware of unauthorized destruction of federal records, that they are required to report the incidents to the archives. At any time in 2011, through last Monday, did the IRS report any loss of records related to Lois Lerner?
No.
Is it fair to say that the IRS broke the Federal Records Act?
They're required, any agency is required to notify us when they realize they have a problem that could be destruction or disposal, unauthorized disposal.
But they didn't do that.
That's right.
Did they break the law?
I'm not a lawyer.
All right, and that exchange went on to the point where the archivist said they didn't follow the law. So James Taranto, columnist for the Wall Street Journal, editor of OpinionJournal.com. So did they break the law?
It sounds like it, although I think the archivist was appropriately cautious in not answering that question directly, but saying that they didn't follow the law. That's about all he has the authority to say here. What's really interesting, have you seen the new Fox News poll about this?
Yes, why don't you could fill us in, but yeah, from what I've seen, the American public is on board with wanting more answers and not trusting what's going on here.
Yeah, here's the question Fox asked, and I quote, "The Internal Revenue Service says the 2 years' worth of emails from IRS employees about targeting conservative and Tea Party groups were accidentally destroyed because of a computer crash and cannot be recovered. Do you believe the IRS that the emails were destroyed accidentally, or do you think that they were destroyed deliberately?" I notice that doesn't leave open the possibility that they weren't destroyed and are just being covered up.
Right.
But let's leave it at that. This gives a pretty good idea where public sentiment is. Now, if you had asked me to guess how many people believe the IRS, I think I would have said somewhere between 30 and 40%. And the reason I would have said that is because this scandal has been framed by the president and by his allies in the Democratic Party and the media as a sort of partisan witch hunt. The president himself said in February there's not a smidgen of corruption here,
right,
just some boneheaded decisions. And so I would expect Obama's hardcore supporters to stand with the IRS on this. Obama's approval rating seldom drops below 40%. It occasionally goes down into the high 30s, but it was 41% in this poll. So I would think about somewhere between 30 and 40% of people would believe the IRS. The actual outcome of the poll was 12% believe the IRS. 70% disbelieve the IRS and think that documents were deliberately destroyed. The remaining 12% don't know. I think that that's a stunning show of no confidence from the public in this agency.
I couldn't agree with you more. And, you know, there's been many comparisons, as you wrote about in the Journal, different Watergate has come up lately in different areas. But, you know, people talking about making comparisons, the missing emails that have been thrown away or whatever, destroyed, and the Nixon, the tape, the gap.
Yeah, although there are two ways in which this appears to be and is potentially worse than Watergate. One is Watergate targeted the president's political enemies. This targeted ordinary citizens who were critics of the government. It's much more sweeping and much more intrusive. And the second is that if we believe the administration that that the IRS was not acting under orders from the president or his political team, and that's still an open question, but if we believe that, then the IRS was acting on its own. The IRS essentially hijacked itself, turned into an enemy of the people. If Watergate was a cancer on the presidency, this scandal, if it is not politically directed, is a cancer on the administrative state.
Now, with Watergate, however, some might say justice was done. You know, people were fired, things happened, people resigned. You know, the massacre. You know, things happened. People were held accountable one way or another. With our Justice Department, they're not going to hold anybody accountable. It certainly looks that way. The president, the White House, as of yesterday, still arguing with reporters that this is a Republican witch hunt. They're not going to fess up and hold anybody responsible. Is anybody going to to suffer any consequences here?
Well, let's remember that Watergate took a while to unfold, too. I mean, the burglary happened in the summer of 1972, in July, I believe, and it wasn't until August of 1974, more than 2 years later, that the president resigned. There was skepticism about it in much of the media. The New York Times didn't give it much coverage, while Woodward and Bernstein at the Washington Post were developing the story. It was a slow process. And by the way, the massacre was the firing of the special prosecutor. Right. It was not the firing of somebody who was implicated in the scandal.
Right.
And so, the Nixon White House fought back too. The problem here is you have the media, by and large, naturally on the side of the administration, and so for the most part, with the newspaper I work for, an obvious exception, the media are not pressing this the way they eventually did, if a bit slowly, with Watergate. But this Fox poll also asked people, do you think Congress should continue to investigate? And 71% said yes, only 25% said no.
Which, by the way, James, oddly enough, is in line with one Hillary Clinton, who, when asked about this, said, and during one of her interviews on the book tour, said anytime the IRS is involved, it's a scandal. And she said that, the investigation should continue.
Yeah, but that was a very equivocal answer. If you look at the way she put that, first of all, that any time the IRS is involved is a way of turning a specific statement into a general statement. What she said, she was asked by the guys on Fox News, right, Bret Baier and Greta Van Susteren, I forget which one of them posed this question, if she agreed with President Obama that there's no corruption here. And she said, well, I think what the president was trying to say was that this needs to be investigated in a nonpartisan way. Well, that's not what the president was trying to say. What the president was trying to say was, there's nothing to see here, move along, I'm a victim here, and, so I don't think that Mrs. Clinton's answers were particularly credible there. I think she was trying to have it both ways.
All right, let's talk about another great piece that you wrote in the Journal the other day, the mindless Iraq debate. And it has gotten, God forbid anybody who had anything to do with the Bush administration should speak up and give their opinion, especially one Dick Cheney. They are just ripped apart, and it just shows that Bush derangement syndrome is still a disease with no cure.
Yeah, the debate on the left has mostly been about just who should not be allowed to speak on this. So is it anyone who supported the Iraq effort initially, which would include John Kerry, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Harry Reid, and any number of other people who switched sides? Or is it just neocons? Is it anyone who was in the Bush administration? It's a very silly debate because you can't actually stop people from arguing about it. But I think this is a way of diverting attention from the Obama administration's failures. I mean, Obama says he inherited this mess. He says that about everything, and he's been saying it for 5 years. But this isn't actually an inheritance. This is a responsibility that he sought out and that the American people gave him. At some point, you have to hold him accountable. You have to hold his administration accountable for its actions. But the debate has gotten so bad that Jonathan Chait of New York Magazine has emerged as the voice of reason. He came out last week and said the problem with this debate is that it prevents the left from thinking about Iraq. And this is a real problem because the left controls the executive branch. The left is making foreign policy decisions. And it's more urgent now than it was in 2002, 2003, or 2006 that the left be able to think clearly about it, because this is a terrible problem. The solution is not obvious. Right. But the responsibility falls on these people to figure out what to do about it.
Right. The solution is not blame Bush and shut up anybody who supported us going in the first place. James, always great to talk to you, sir. Thank you so much for coming on.
All right, thanks.
Take care. James Taranto, ladies and gentlemen, Wall Street Journal and Best of the Web and OpinionJournal.com, you name it, he's there. Very interesting conversation. When we come back, another very interesting conversation. I can assure you we're going to talk with Professor of Economics, Dr. Casey Mulligan. A lot to talk about with him. And of course, every day we get new economic statistics, and the GDP downgraded today, readjusted downward. We'll talk about it coming up.